National Weather Service had on this warning what we refer to as severe thunderstorm warning with tornado possible. Rick, I'm going to come over to the analyst, and you've been watching that storm very close to Leavenworth, really closely. This is on the northern edge of this, and normally when you're going to get a quick spin up, it's going to be right on that northern side. So what has happened here is now it's kind of created an artificial warm front in a sense, where it's a little cooler to the north where it's rained more, and then further south, we have much warmer air. We note that this is an area where storms will like to spin. You're looking at Leavenworth right there. That's our focal area right now for this tornado warning. And we need to think also Corydon. This is going to be in the trajectory of this storm. So we'll need to make sure our Corydon camera is looking at this as it's approaching. But Rick, tell us what you're seeing.
So what you're looking for, those greens and those reds banking up right next to one another. And we do see that just south of Leavenworth. Mark, I'm going to go through the exercise where we go from velocity scans over to correlation coefficient. And this is simply just a different product that would let us know if anything was being picked up, lifted, and thrown, tossed in the air, indicating damage was being done. And thank goodness I am not for now seeing any sort of signal of that showing up on that correlation coefficient, which you see is everything is pink, indicating it's all the same size in the horizontal and the vertical. Just good old-fashioned rain, but it is raining in buckets in that location. Looking at that storm on base velocity, what you notice is does have this kind of backward C appearance, and that indicating a bow of some very powerful winds pressing outward, the apex of that moving just south of Leavenworth. So we're going to look at some really gusty winds, and there are still several little areas of rotation embedded within there. So that's why we keep saying there could be a quick spin up associated with that. Looking again at the velocity within inside that storm, there is spin. There's no doubt about that, which is why the Weather Service has prompted that warning. But at the same time, I'm still not seeing anything that screams out tornado. I'm going to go over to normalized rotation, which is another one. We say green means go. And when that's the case, you should act immediately. Take your kids, your family, go to your safe space and stay down there until this storm passes by.
And you know, one of the values that we have of having our network of cameras around the area is that we are able to watch these storms. You know, we as a team, when we kind of come together at the end of the year, we always talk about the things that we want that are going to be able to allow us to do our jobs better. And this is the reason why we built our camera network around the area. We've got a tornado-warned storm approaching the Corydon area, and now we have eyeballs on that storm because we have the camera network out there. It is worth noting that you don't need to be physically
Mark, I think we have a little debris.
Okay, you think or you feel like? I'm going to come back over to you real quick, Rick.
I think it's worth noting it matches perfectly up with where the velocity is. It's inside reflectivity.
It could be the rotation there. I mean, there's definitely rotation.
It's subtle, just a little bit though. It's subtle.
And so just so you understand here, I'm going to go over the weather wall briefly here so I can kind of discuss here. But what we would look for are very, very dark, basically blue holes in that. Rick just kind of discussed it, but our radar now has the ability to see particles out there. We know that if we're in a rainy area, we know that all the raindrops are the same. Of course, there can be some that are a little bit bigger than others, but hail really would be one of the few things in a precipitation area that should be different size. So understand what we're saying here is that if we see something that's different size, it can't be raindrops, and then it brings up the question, well, what is that? That would be debris being lofted. So this is something really important to note. Here is the rotation. Is this a current scan here, Rick?
That is not the current scan. That's the old scan.
Okay, so let's go back to velocity and let's take it up to current so just we can take a look at is the rotation increasing or decreasing? You can see there is, the green in particular is a little bit brighter here. It is a little, it's not on top of each other. If we get a spin up here, we're not talking about a large violent type of tornado, but a quick spin up absolutely could occur. And so that rotation is spread across here just south of Leavenworth. Rick, now let's look at the correlation coefficient in this area. Rick noted these little pops, it's possible. I don't think that we could say that that's a tornado debris signature, but I think that that is definitely at least worth looking at and inspecting a little bit more closely. I know that people around the rest of our area are curious. For me, what's going on? And let's go over to StormView HD, Hannah, on the wider perspective. We'll start off with a timeline for the tornado-warned storm. So this is in white cloud 8 minutes from now. This means take cover in Corydon. You have 14 minutes until a potential tornado could be in your area. You don't wait. You take that warning. You're proactive on this one. We notice that we've got widespread rain in southern Indiana as we look like Seymour, Bedford, North Vernon. Do I have concern that this line's going to be severe for you? I would say I have a lower concern. The greater concern is going to be near the Ohio River and south. Why? Because the fuel's better. It rained in southern Indiana for quite a bit earlier, and that lowered the fuel. Let's go in and track each portion of this line. Coming into Grayson County right now, 60-mile-an-hour winds are the main threat on this. The National Weather Service right now does not note tornado warning on this storm near Litchfield. Let's do a track on that part of the storm and take it across Grayson County. I know a lot of people in E-Town are going to be wondering, when is that storm going to be in my area? Storms are moving at about 50 miles an hour, 10 minutes from now in the Sunfish area. Litchfield from now 16 minutes, Wax 25 minutes, and 30 in Millerstown. And Hannah, let's just go a little bit further north. I want to take that northern part of the line, also the non-tornado warned portion, because I think it's important to note that there are still a lot of people being impacted that are going to be curious, when should I expect 60-mile-an-hour winds? Hannah's going to take that off to the east 4 minutes from now in Irvington. 11 minutes from now in the Brandenburg area, 19 minutes from now in Flaherty, and PRP, so this is moving into Louisville 30 minutes from now. And I think all of us, as we look at this and think, we know that severe thunderstorms with a tornado-warned storm approaching Louisville during the evening commute. Hannah, the timing on this is not good at all. Not that it ever is, but this is a really bad time.
If we're looking for a bright spot, it's that it's coming in when we expected it to.
That's
so
true.
Hopefully folks took that alerting seriously, as we've talked about it for about 24 hours now, expecting these storms to be in the Louisville metro between about 4 and 5. And here we are, it's 4:38. The storm's about 30 minutes away from Louisville metro. Again, we do have an active tornado warning that's west of Louisville right now. Now, the Weather Service mentioned something interesting as we think about that tornado-warned storm, about the potential for a water spout as that comes across the Ohio River. So I also think as we watch the correlation coefficient here, we should keep that in mind, that
That's a good point.
we're seeing maybe some extra water that's being lofted into the cloud itself.
That's an update to the tornado warning right
Right.
now. Let me just give that specifically. They just canceled Crawford and Meade out of it. Continuing radar indicated tornado, not radar confirmed, but radar indicated. This is now only Harrison County. Hannah didn't want to interrupt, but just wanted to update on that. And also of note, by the way, in the bottom right would be the Corydon camera, so you can see. You know, if you're in Corydon, it's
turn
time.
that a little bit. Yeah, if you're in Corydon, it's time. Let's turn this around a little bit so you can get a better look.
Okay, and I'm going to take that full, guys, in the production, so you know. This is the storm as it's approaching Corydon. Hannah's going to recenter that so we can take a look at where the updraft base is on that storm. You can see there, definitely there is a lowering that we would at least be watching. If you're going to get a tornado on a situation like this, the likelihood of getting a good view on it is going to be exceptionally low. You can see some lightning strikes there. Hannah, it's kind of become a point now in our science that we have to tell people, hey, there's a tornado warning, and I know what happens is people grab the camera, walk outside. We've seen so many videos of that in Arkansas. We saw it where people could have lost their lives on something like this. Don't go outside with your camera.
No.
Don't do that unless you want to put your life at risk and maybe your family not get to enjoy you for the rest of your life. These are serious. Tornadoes can and do kill people. Don't take those risks. We've got the camera for you. If that's what you want to see, take your phone down into your basement, stream us off the WDRB.com website, and you can watch it. We'll show it to you, but please don't put your life at risk. Rick, you're watching it closely. I'm going to come back over to StormView 3D. What are you seeing different over the last couple of scans?
Over the last couple of scans, I mean, it's just kind of maintaining this rotation. While it's really broad, it's definitely pronounced enough where it deserves the warning, and there's no doubt about that in my mind. So if you are in Corydon, you need to take action. You need to do that immediately. The storm system is quickly moving in from the west. So again, State Road 135, that's going to basically be the area of rotation that's going to cross right over that. Again, Corydon right now in the line of the storm. I'm not seeing anything on NROT, which is normalized rotation, or also the correlation coefficient that would signify that there's anything major being done. But what I want to do is just kind of make sure that that's not the case. We're getting updates very frequently. We're in what's called sales mode. So every minute we get new radar scans, and that's why we kind of have our heads down so frequently to kind of make sure that we're not seeing anything different so frequently. So again, I mean, I'm seeing rotation.
It's just tough to say.
It's tough to say. It's kind of a muddy scan with this one.
And you know, in these quick spin-up situations, Rick, they can form really, really quickly.
Absolutely.
The signature on one of these quick spin-ups is probably not going to match, you know, an example of the EF3 tornado that we saw over Arkansas or over Iowa. These are not going to have that same type of a signature. So in that, we need to be really aware that as we look at these, when we speak quick spin-up, they can occur very, very quickly with not a huge amount of notice. So that's really important. And Rick, Hannah's got a timeline of these up as well. So you can see, you know, Corydon's only got a couple minutes now to prepare. I mean, if you're thinking, maybe I want to go to my, no, you go to your tornado cellar now, right now, your tornado shelter. If you've got an interior room, it's the best place to be. Bathtub's always great if there's a tornado approaching. If you can get into basement, that's always going to be one of the safer spots. Hannah, you've had also the experience of going out after tornadoes have hit with damage surveys, and it is remarkable the number of times that we see an interior room. The whole outside of the house is blasted, interior room standing with no problems. It's real. It is a much safer spot.
And we don't just tell that to you because it's a theory. It's because that's what we see survive strong tornadoes. I will mention that this looks like it's headed right for Corydon. I mean, right for kind of downtown part of the city there. That area of rotation that Rick is keeping a close eye on, headed right for the city. I mean, that's the camera that you're watching here. So there's a tree in the foreground. The camera on the bottom right corner is in Corydon. So you're going to watch how this moves a little bit. That's really all you're going to be able to see, though, because there is so much rain here, and that's obviously what's showing up in the camera. You're not going to be able to see far away. This is not if it's a tornado right now, this is not a tornado you're going to just walk across the screen. We're going to watch how the tree behaves as the storm moves through.
And if we could, guys, let's make let's keep radar in the bottom corner box. I'd like to take the Corydon, if you could, and put it in the larger box there. We need to watch this very, very, very closely. If you guys can put radar in the bottom corner of this view, that would be really important. Rick, stay with that camera if you could.
Yep.
Let's make sure that we're on top of this. We're watching Corydon live right now as a tornado-warned storm is quickly approaching the Corydon area. Please, if you're in Corydon, take the warning seriously right now. Do not attempt to go outside. And you'll notice that there are some breaks briefly here in the stream of that camera. It may have froze on us there. Let me see if I can get that from the weather computer and see if we have that froze as well. Okay, so it does appear that the camera may have frozen up briefly. If we could, let's continue to keep an eye on that. Let's put radar back now into the bigger screen here, because it does appear that our Corydon camera, if there was a power outage or something like that, that could have caused that. Rick, the rotation, I've got Storm View 3D on. Actually, I'm going to come over to Hannah, Rick, while you keep an eye on that camera.
Yeah, Corydon's in and out. If you go back, it's kind of just back and forth. But wow, the winds are insane right now.
Okay. It's on our weather system.
It might lag, but give it a second. You can see just how strong those winds are.
It's worth seeing what we catch in between those, in the scans
that are,
the frames
that are skips,
but
I don't know if on our weather computer it's going to allow that. Hannah, I'm going to come over to you real quickly. You can give an update on where that is to Corydon. I'm going to see if there's a secondary way that I may be able to have access to that camera on a... Okay, we do have it. There it is. So there's the live stream of
It's moving into Corydon right now. I mean, the part of the storm that we were watching that has rotation on it, the circulation here, it is moving over this location right now. So we're about to get a really good look at the inside of this thunderstorm. You can actually, if we take the radar computer, we can zoom in that back computer radar a little bit more.
Okay.
But as we take a really close look at the radar, you can see it right here on the monitor behind us. The strongest part of this storm, the part that has that rotation in it, and it's still showing up a little bit on our GR analyst, our Storm View 3D here. That's what's moving through Corydon right now. So this is really about to start to get more active.
Okay, so here one thing to note, the tornado warning has been allowed to expire. All things considering and where we are, I'm going to stay with this for a little while. I just want to make sure that we don't go back to news here and then end up back doing another cut-in and interrupt here. So what we're going to do is we're going to stay with the cut-in here for a few more moments. My belief is at minimum, what we're seeing in Corydon is probably 60-mile-an-hour winds.
Yep, they went through another one.
Okay, so that with the new tornado warning, understand that's the reason that we chose to stay here. So we've got a tornado warning for Floyd and Harrison County for severe thunderstorms producing both tornadoes and extensive straight line winds. So tornado, and really in that warning area. So now you see this is getting awfully, awfully close to Louisville. This is for a radar indicated potential tornado. And you can see the spot, as Hannah has it focused, is heading towards Georgetown. Now, Hannah, on radar there, one of the things you'll notice is right over that 64 dot, which is just north of Corydon, you kind of see that little appenditure out there. It's sticking out a little bit further. That is a signal that rotation is pulling that rain underneath the storm and wrapping it around. And that's the reason why we're focused on that area. And if you notice, if you're ever curious, by the way, we have multiple computers here. I can get National Weather Service information. I control which computer we can kind of see. And you'll notice that Hannah is normally heads down on this computer, looking at radar on her workstation. Rick head down on his computer, working on his workstation. I always say this, but when we have a possibility of tornadoes, we put multiple eyes on the storms and watch this very, very closely. I'm going to head over to the wall real quickly, and Rick, I'd like to do a quick view through that part of the storm on Storm View 3D, and I want to just assess what we're looking at. So in Corydon, what you will notice is the area of rotation is right along 64. That's a real problem during the near evening commute, that our area of most significant rotation is along one of our main interstates. Now, that said, it is north of Corydon right now. So it does appear that right along the exit of 64, that Corydon exit, that is an area that we would need to watch very closely. Now, where does it go? It's moving towards Crandall, moving towards Georgetown. So these would be some areas that I would watch. Rick, let's go back a few scans here and kind of see the evolution of this rotation. Here it was, and you can see, was on a beeline to go just north of Corydon. As we move, one of the things I note here, there was a period where it did come down maybe just a pinch in intensity, and then as we start to move it forward into the current, it does appear to me that the rotation is now stacking up a little. New update here. Let's move in right over the Crandall area. Rotation, we have some bad gates in here, unfortunately. So if you look at this little hole here, the purple, by the way, for what it means is it's called ND. It means that the radar has got a bad data out of there. This will be about 3 minutes, but we'll continue to watch. The ND gates here mean that we can't exactly see because it has a bad signal-to-noise ratio. It's a complicated thing, but what I will say is you can still see our areas of rotation. It's very close to the Crandall area, and I just want you to note that there are subtle rotations along 64 through Corydon further east. Our camera that is going to become best here shortly would be our New Albany camera. We'll continue to watch that one as well. Rick, I want to go through the exercise of do we see anything that would indicate debris. So I'm going to put my hand where the area of rotation is, and we're going to put correlation coefficient. Rick, can you show me if there's any precipitation over the Crandall area right now?
No.
Okay, so the good news, that hole in the pink, you're like, that's a tornado mark. It's not raining there right now. That means that the radar is just picking up that little hole there is actually a lack of rain. This is why it's critical when we look for these debris signatures to know exactly what multiple products are indicating. In Crandall, you need to be taking your tornado safety precautions immediately. Notice there's a small little hail spike that'll be moving in as well. Hannah, can you give me a track on this storm as it continues its march towards the northeast? The tornado warned part of the storm is likely to go north of Louisville. Nonetheless, there is still damaging winds that could be in play. Tornado warning for Harrison and for Floyd County until 5:15. Hail size on this one as well is going to be 3/4 of an inch. A track on this as it continues its march towards southern Indiana. We need to be thinking about areas in the Knobs. We need to be thinking about New Albany. We need to be thinking about Sellersburg. It's in the Georgetown area 7 minutes from now, 20 minutes from now, the Knobs, 36 minutes from now in Hamburg, and 39 minutes from now in Sellersburg. Louisville, we just put you now under a severe thunderstorm warning as you just saw that. Let's look at that storm that is now moving into Louisville. Again, to be clear, all of Louisville now under a severe thunderstorm warning. I'd like to look at that warning and see if that is a warning for damaging winds only or tornado possible. Hannah does have tornado possible in the tag. So let's track that. Let me just take a moment here. So let's just talk for a second. The National Weather Service issued a severe thunderstorm warning with tornado possible. You're like, Mark, that happened on Friday night where we saw a severe thunderstorm warning with tornado possible. We got an EF1 tornado warning, an EF1 tornado that touched down near Old Henry Road and the Gene Snyder, and it did some damage. And you're like, wait, that's the same warning we have right now. It is. So what do? We need to take this as though a tornado could form with little or no notice. Understand that. Tornadoes can and do form quickly out of these types of warnings. So we are watching them closely, but if you're in Louisville, this is getting towards the 5 o'clock hour. I normally don't tell people what to do. We all have to make our own decisions. My advice, and this is just coming from my radar expertise, is Louisville, don't leave to go home from work right now. My opinion is you get caught out on the road. If there's a tornado warning, or if this does produce a quick spin up, that's not a safe place to be. Best case scenario, 60-mile-an-hour winds in Louisville. The worst case is a quick tornado forms. But you can see this is crossing the Ohio River right now and moving into Louisville. So let's get to it here. Muldrow, 3 minutes from now, a severe thunderstorm with a tornado possible. PRP, 10 minutes from now, severe thunderstorm with tornado possible. Shively, 13. Downtown Louisville, that's where I work, that's my crew, that's my group at the station here. I'm telling everybody here, severe thunderstorm with tornado possible. Newburgh, 23 minutes from now, and 29 minutes from now in the J-Town area. This should give you a sense as this moves across Louisville what to expect. Remember, 60-mile-an-hour winds at minimum. Tornado could quickly occur. I also want to make sure we don't forget about those off to the south, as we have severe thunderstorms that cover a large part of our southern counties as well. This is Grayson County right now. We're going to do a track on this part of the line as well. One of the things I hope you know is that when it comes to this stuff, whether you're the biggest county or our smallest county, we care about you. And so in Millerstown, prepare for 60-mile-an-hour winds in 10 minutes, 15 minutes from now in Cecilia, 21 minutes from now in E-Town. We're watching our camera there. We'll watch as that storm moves in, and 31 minutes in Magnolia. Hannah, we've been continuing to watch these storms move across the area. All of these storms pose the threat of damaging winds and some small hail, but there's one storm we're watching the closest for, a tornado.
So we have this active tornado warning for parts of Floyd and Harrison County until 5:15. It's why we're continuing to stay with you, because this storm has a history of spinning up, producing some quick rotation, and it has done that again recently. I want to see if we can take the New Albany camera and show to you what's going on there. The storm is not actually there yet. The most intense part of the storm where we've seen that rotation is not there yet. This is what you're going to see on the leading edge of the storm. So you're taking a live look right now in New Albany. You're looking out toward the west, right along the highway there. A couple of interesting features to note. First of all, I just want to acknowledge that if you're in New Albany, or if you're under a cloud feature that looks like this, it looks a little intimidating. Even what you see in the foreground of just kind of the different coloring in the clouds kind of looks like it's waving a little bit. There's some ripples there. That's pretty normal in an active, severe weather setup. Now, as you look a little bit farther into the background, the farther you can look away from the camera, it gets a little jagged and things are hanging below the cloud. So kind of the middle of the frame there, everything looks really smooth and dark. Once you look a little bit below that, it starts to get jagged, looks like it's falling apart, but it's also getting lower to the ground. So we're seeing rainfall out of this, obviously. There's plenty of rain inside of this storm. What we're not seeing here, some really good news, no tornado on the ground. But this is something we want to watch closely as we watch the cloud base lower a little bit. This is where we would see something like that form, a funnel or something of that sort.
And 1,200, by the way, without power in Harrison County. Hannah, to what you said, remember that what makes this challenging for us is that this is going to not be your supercell thunderstorm that has that big wall cloud and then the tornado drop down out of it. This is what we call a QLCS, and what that means is it's a line of thunderstorms that can produce a tornado with quick or maybe even no notice. And so those areas that we're watching in New Albany, we're going to be watching as we look towards the west to make sure none of those drop down. We also have the 800 building as well looking west, if we want to pop that up, so we can show you what we have that we're viewing there. By the way, if you're going to go into your safe spot, remember, take your phone with you. We've made life easy. You can watch us. If you have an iPad, bring it with you down into your safe spot. You can watch the coverage live there. And if you ever want to see our cameras, you can watch our cameras as well on WDRB.com/weather. Looks like a little shelf cloud or roll cloud, developing out ahead of the severe cluster moving. And just so you know what you're seeing there, if that comes overhead of you, that's the nose of the gusty winds. So the thunderstorm is pushing cold out ahead of it. As it does, that acts as a wedge. That wedge lifts the air and creates that roll cloud. So that's what we're seeing. Rick is looking on Storm View 3D, and Rick, The area you're watching now, it's evolving, that area of rotation. It's evolved a little further south.
Yes.
I see that you're looking closer to Lanesville now.
Yeah, so there's a couple areas of rotation, but you exactly just read my mind. So if I switch over from velocity, which is what you're seeing, the greens and the reds, just the winds, excuse me, now to en routes, and we say
There it
green
is.
means go, and there's a tiny little pocket of rotation. The last step in all this is to make sure that we don't have any debris being lofted. I'm not seeing anything that screams out we have a tornado, in fact, on the ground doing damage. Good news to report there, but what I want to mention is that if this stays on the same track, it's going to move out
might
of the
breach
tornado
the line,
warning,
yeah.
breach that line, and move a bit farther off to the east. So I do think that we should watch the southern edge of that. They may need to drop that warning a little bit south if that trend indeed continues.
And good information. Rick's going to continue to be eyeing that very, very closely, Storm View 3D. Hannah, you're continuing to look at the timeline here as these storms are moving through the metro. This is really important. We're now at 5 o'clock. A lot of people thinking about leaving work. Let's update on that timeline. And I think you would kind of agree on this one. Don't.
Yeah.
Don't leave work right now. I mean, it's just simple. It's not a good idea. You can choose whatever you want. We're not your parents, but we're just giving you honest advice on this, and that it's not a safe time to be leaving work, and that's just reality.
Let me update this. We got a new radar scan in,
Okay.
and these storms are racing. I mean, they're driving just as fast as you would be on the interstate, if not faster in some cases. So, yeah, now is not a great time to hit the road. You are taking your life in your hands. You're risking it, right? You're taking a chance if you're driving out in the middle of a tornado warning of a storm that has a history of rotating. So we're telling you not to. To the best of our knowledge and ability, we feel that that would be unsafe, especially in the communities that are listed here. This is going to be in the knobs just in the next couple of minutes. We've already talked extensively about New Albany. You're part of this as well. The Blackiston Mill area, you can see them listed here just about 10 minutes away from where we've seen this storm rotate, and at the very least, from the strongest wind inside of this storm. Sellersburg, you have about 15 minutes, and Charlestown, a little bit farther, about 25 minutes. But these storms are moving with forward progress anywhere between about 50 and 60 miles an hour. So the good news here is that if you're waiting for this to pass by, you won't be waiting very long. Then you can safely get in your car and head to where you're going. And if you're watching this sitting at home saying, well, I didn't go to work today, or I'm working from home, this is a great opportunity to text your people. Call your people who are around Louisville and our southern Indiana communities and say, hey, Hannah, Mark, and Rick are here saying, maybe just wait it out for a few minutes, let the storm pass, and then it would be safer to hit the road and head home for the day.
And if we could, I'd like to look at New Albany there as well here, so we can kind of shift back and forth here. So we are constantly looking at our camera network. There we go. Wow. So this is the kind of stuff that makes us uneasy. The area of rotation, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, should be moving directly towards our New Albany camera.
Or just south of it.
Just
Very
south,
close
yeah.
to or just south.
Okay, so let's, as we aim this camera, Hannah, I believe we're looking due west. Let's keep the view on that just south of west. The problem here, and you're going to see as we continue to show you this, that there will be these little fingers that can kind of drop down from those storms. Stay with that camera if we could, the New Albany camera. These little fingers that can drop down. And we will need to watch every one of these to see if indeed we can get a quick spin up in these scenarios. Those spin ups will occur within there. So you've got a live look from New Albany. It looks like a little RFD is developing here. RFD normally would cause a little bit of increased rotation. So here's one of those fingers that we're watching. Here's one of those fingers that we're watching. This is moving directly towards downtown or between New Albany and downtown Louisville. So this is going to be kind of getting close to the Ohio River. This view, Hannah, can we get a little bit closer on this appendage here? It does appear to be coming down just a little bit. Again, for the sake of being very, very thorough, I just want to make sure. And looking in this area here to see if we've got any rotation. Let's drop that down just a little bit so I can get a little bit more of the ground in view there. There is the, okay, so it doesn't look like we're getting any drop right now. Hannah, let's just make sure on that ground contact area there that we don't see any debris or anything like that. But you can kind of see there is some rain for sure wrapping around this area.
It's going right over the river for what it's worth. So I think we might be seeing
Intriguing.
some moisture return up and down.
See right here, Hannah?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I think we're picking up some rain that's dropping and some water from the river that maybe is getting sucked up a little bit.
Very intriguing to watch. Hannah, let's move it a little bit further left as well, because remember, there's that second area that we're watching. This is live right now, guys. You're watching live the tornado warning as this is going between New Albany and Louisville. We're overlooking the Sherman-Minton Bridge. This is the second area where we possibly had a little bit of a finger lowering there. I don't see anything right now that overly concerns me there for sure. And you can see right here, there's clearly rising motion in this. Notice the cloud base. See it right there? See that reforming? That is definitely where we've got the updraft. That is definitely where we have that rising air. This is intriguing to watch. Let me see Storm View 3D if we could, Rick, real quickly. I just want to make sure that what we're seeing under here, we haven't seen any significant change in terms of our rotation. Let's go over to storm. Is this storm relative, Rick, or is this base?
That's a storm relative.
Okay, so storm relative velocity right now. The rotation definitely, there we go. That's what I was looking for. That is looking right into it, that camera. So we're looking right down that. There are definitely multiple areas of rotation here that are just to the west-southwest of New Albany. This is something we've got to watch very, very closely. I want to really emphasize tornadoes can and do form with little advance notice. We're watching it very closely as we've got our camera viewed square on it, but that area of rotation right now is just south of 64. There's the new update on that scan. So let me just give you radar down here, looking up through the storm. So we've got area of rotation that we're watching right now. This is basically just south of New Albany. There's multiple little areas of rotation here that we are watching very closely. To me, nothing looks like it's elevating or getting worse, but we're watching it still extremely closely. And you can see we've got our camera from New Albany continuing to view it. I'm curious what the 800 building has, because that one's aimed west looking as well. Can we take 800 building camera real quickly, just so we can have multiple views? And I think also of note here, Rick, is in Louisville, we're starting to see some elevated gates here. Elevated gates are saying that we're seeing pockets of stronger wind. Now this is only at about 12 to 1,300 feet above the ground. What are you seeing?
So what I'm seeing is some potential very powerful winds which could be yanked from upside in that storm and get pulled down to the surface. How strong am I talking about? Well, I'm looking at some of the pixels, and each one represents some of the strongest winds. The brighter the pixel, the stronger the gusts. And right now, seeing 67 knots.
Okay, so that's 72-ish.
72, because you multiply that by 1.15 to convert it from knots over to miles per hour.
And this is important stuff.
That's destructive
This is
winds.
what you saw on Friday night as those storms were coming through Louisville. You saw some of these pixels, you identified them, and then we started to get damage in those areas.
Power outages came in.
There may very well be near 70-mile-per-hour winds, as Rick noted, heading towards Linview. So this is going to be just south of the airport on 64. And you can see, as we look west on our 800 building, as these storms are moving into Louisville, this is going to be quite the show to watch as it moves in here. Remember, there's no need for you to go outside and look at these storms. We've got our cameras cover the area. We've got our meteorologists watching these storms. You're going to be able to see, just by watching us, what's occurring out there. Let's now briefly go back over to New Albany. Hannah's manning that camera, and you'll notice Hannah stepped into the back. So actually, let's stay with 800. You can. Oh, there's the. Wow. So you can see the shelf that's moving towards Louisville. This is not going to be our best camera to view rotation anymore. 800 building is going to be where we stay on that. But you can see, so the sheets are now moving into downtown Louisville. This is this severe thunderstorm moving into the city right now. You can see, let's take the 800 building full if we could. You can see the sheets of rain now that are moving through downtown Louisville. This is the severe thunderstorm moving into Louisville, and look at those sheets of rain. Normally what's going to start to happen now, look at that as you look towards the downtown city. You can see those 40, 50, 60 mile an hour winds. Rick has seen some of these areas where we're maybe looking at 70. Now you can see downtown Louisville completely obscured as this severe thunderstorm comes through. This is normally where we're going to start to see the camera starting to shake. Hannah, here's the reality. If you're going to go outside and try to drive in this, who wants to drive in that?
Not
Wait
me.
the storm out. You can't even see the buildings anymore.
And this is, again, on top of the 800 building. We're not thousands of feet in the air. This is right down where you are working, where you are considering getting in your car and going home. Now is not a great time. This is one of those severe thunderstorm warnings where we want to say you got to be prepared for this to become a bigger deal in a moment's notice. In fact, that's what Rick is watching for.
Yeah.
Rick, go ahead and go, I think, out to the weather wall so you can point this out to us better.
Areas.
I think we're seeing a couple of areas, some at the very least elevated wind. And again, we're looking just south. Ooh,
I'm going to go over to the regular velocity here
I
because
think that's really helpful.
I think that what we're seeing here that I would be most concerned about is that area that Rick identified near the Linview area. I don't know that it's necessarily rotation here, but Rick, kind of speak through. The gate there is 72 knots at 1,100 feet. Speak to what that's showing us.
That's
Before you point that out to us, the Weather Service just let us know that the airport measured 78 miles per hour.
78, guys. That's nearly eight. That's over hurricane force wind gusts. That's exactly what you identified, Rick. This is what we're seeing here. That nearly 80-mile-an-hour wind gust is heading towards West Butyl. This is a destructive level wind.
You do not want to be outside. You need to be in an interior room away from windows. So if you're on your first floor of your house, you're watching TV, I need you to grab your phone, go to the lowest floor. This is for some very powerful winds hitting Linview right now, 80-mile-per-hour winds. That's going to snap down some tree limbs, cause some power outage, perhaps do some damage to not only your property, but there's also the threat to your life. So in Linview, you need to act immediately. Get away from the windows, get in a safe place, lowest level of your home. If your basement is open and available, that's the best spot you can be. Right now, some very strong winds moving through Linview. So where does this go next? Moving east, areas like West Butyl. Now is the time to think ahead. These winds, if they hold together, they are moving in your area, so they could be there very shortly. Again, scramble, get to your safe place, not seeing anything that screams tornado when it comes to the greens and the reds in the rotation, but there's some very strong winds which are being taken from aloft and pushed down to the surface. So I'm guessing power outages will follow in that exact location from Linview into West Butyl. So putting a tracker on that one, J-Town around 9 minutes, Middletown 11, Simpsonville about 20, 22, 25 minutes or so if it holds together, and Shelbyville, this strong, severe storm will be in your neck of the woods in about a half hour. You can see that bow indicating some very strong winds. That's going to be the main concern here moving forward.
And so we can hear from the 800 building from our downtown location how those winds really elevated and picked up, and you can just kind of see. Remember, this is near 80-mile-an-hour winds that just moved through this area. This is a dangerous storm that's moving through Louisville. I really want to make a firm statement here. Do not attempt to drive home now. You don't want to do it. We're talking 78-mile-an-hour winds that are moving through Linview and likely in West Butyl right now that would move off to the east of St. Matthews near the St. Regis Park area and ultimately towards Middletown. We saw on Friday this exact same scenario. We had some gates that picked up in the western side of Louisville that were 70-plus-mile-an-hour winds. It moved into East Louisville. It did produce an EF1 tornado. It is possible in this setup to get a very quick tornado. You can see from our parking lot here in Louisville the storms that we have moving through. Simpsonville is quickly going to become the camera that we need to watch here. And we've got Simpsonville aiming west so that we can look into the storm. Severe thunderstorm warning remains in effect for all of Louisville. I'm going to head over to the wall, and what I'd like to do here is tour and track what we're seeing and focus on some of the strongest winds that we have. Louisville, you're under elevated severe thunderstorm warning. We focused on you. Let's make sure we cover the rest of our area. Hannah, we're going to start south and then make our march back to Louisville. But we've got severe thunderstorm warnings as well. You're like, Mark, I'm in Munfordville, or I'm in Magnolia, or I'm in Hodgenville. What am I seeing? That's a great question. Let's get the E-Town camera ready, by the way, because I'd like to take a look there in a moment. Upton, 2 minutes from now. Munfordville, 10 minutes from now, 60-plus-mile-per-hour winds are possible. In Hardeeville, we're 18 minutes from now. Ward's 23 minutes. In Somersville, now prepare yourself for some 60-mile-an-hour winds. Notice the severe thunderstorm warning does include the E-Town area. Let's take that camera, if we could, full. Put it behind me. I want to take a look at what what we have right now in E-Town. And you can see this is live from Elizabethtown. As we look around the area, you can see here the winds don't look crazy strong, which is some good news on this, but this is inside where that severe thunderstorm warning is. Back over to radar, let's continue that march as we move back to the north. And you can see Elizabethtown, we just showed you the strongest winds have already moved into Elizabethtown. Now we go further to the north. I know people in Mount Washington are curious. People in, let's say, around Lebanon Junction are curious. I want to give you a track on your location. It's bearing down on Mount Washington now. Be aware, we've identified some spots in here that are north of 70-mile-an-hour winds, so we need to watch that. Rod, I want to let you know in the production booth, if we could, let's get a sense of what the power outages look like in Louisville. That's going to give us a realistic idea of what kind of damage we're getting from these storms. Lebanon Junction, it's on top of you. Mount Washington, you have 6 to 9 minutes for 60-mile-an-hour winds to move towards you. Protect yourself now. Get into the interior part of your house. Stay away from windows, even if it's a normal severe thunderstorm. Good practice is wise in this scenario. In Smithfield, 16 minutes from now, Taylorsville, 37 minutes from now, and 43 minutes in Wakefield. And then we move into Louisville here. You'll notice the warning has been expanded now beyond Louisville, so LaGrange, Shelbyville, think about it. In Newburgh, 2 minutes from now, J-Town, you've got 8 minutes until 60, 70, and even 80-mile-an-hour winds are possible. Buckner, 16 minutes from now, 27 minutes from now in Shelbyville, and 34 in Christiansburg. Rick, I know you've had your eye buried on the analyst here looking for some of those higher wind gusts. Are we seeing a better situation? Are we seeing worse? Does anything concern you in terms of rotation versus straight line winds?
So the rotation still exists, just to point that out. It's directly over West Butyl. I'm going over to base velocity, so just to highlight the actual intensity of some of those winds, and it is still showing 72 knots. Okay, new scan. All right, well, thank goodness. We're not seeing the same intensity when it comes to the winds, but don't let your guard down. I mean, we're still talking about some very strong winds. They have now moved east, so approaching Jeffersontown, Hollow Creek, and then just south outside the Snyder. That's where now some of the strongest winds are beginning to appear.
Yeah,
and it looks like 70 plus again. Yeah,
oh
so,
man, Glenmary, who had it's.
I know.
Okay, well, we never like to hear the same name twice.
But you could see the Weather Service, by the way, has upgraded this warning, Hannah. So this is not your severe thunderstorm warning. This is your ultra bad severe thunderstorm warning. This is one of the high level warnings now.
It is. We're talking about the potential for wind gusts up to 80 miles an hour. So we've already gotten a gust over 70. There was no option but to now increase that warning to say, we've already done this, and the storm is still just as powerful or getting stronger. So now the Weather Service is using one of these high-end severe thunderstorm warnings to say, you've got to pay attention. This is weather that is a threat to you at this point. Even if we're not talking about a tornado in your area, the strength of the wind gust right now, what we've observed at the airport, what that sensor measured, and then what Rick is pointing out to you is moving through the southern part of the county now, that's destructive. That's the word that the Weather Service is using. We're also starting to get a lot of power outage reports. I think now is a good time to talk about that. So Corydon, you saw some really strong wind when this rolled through your area. We've seen, I think, about 1,200 folks in that general area without power. And then as we look toward Jefferson County, we're also seeing those numbers really start to climb. At last count, that was close to 3,000. So here's the current outage map. And you can see as that storm marches west to east through the county, obviously we're seeing more outages on the western side of Jefferson County. Those are going to extend. We're going to get more of those as we go farther to the east.
Just got an email from someone in Fern Valley that roofs are being torn off right now in Okolona, Jefferson Boulevard, and Fern Valley, power on and off. Let me just say that one more time. Just got this email in that roofs are being torn off here in Okolona. This is a serious situation. Glenmary, be very concerned about 80-mile-an-hour winds, but some of those extend even further north as we go towards around Newburgh and Butyl. I just want to be clear here. These pops on the radar of the pink you see there are 70-plus mile-per-hour winds. Now, here's the reality. That's your best case situation if you're under one of these pops. The worst case situation if you're under one of these pops is it can produce a quick tornado. Whether the tornado sirens go off or not, the Weather Service has severe thunderstorm warning with tornado possible. We saw it on Friday night. These can and do produce tornadoes. I would say if you're outside of the Waterson Expressway, it doesn't hurt right now to be in your tornado safe spot because one of these 80-mile-per-hour winds can turn to a brief spin up and really, your house, your windows, It doesn't matter if it's 80-mile-an-hour winds from a EF0/EF1 tornado or straight line winds. I think we kind of get caught up in this sometimes.
For sure.
You know, a tornado had to hit my house because it did X damage. Your house doesn't care if it's a tornado or straight line winds. They both do serious damage when we're at this level. And we have viewers telling us that roofs are being torn off from this. This is an elevated warning, a concern here. You know, the crazy thing about this season, last year, we had the West Point 80-mile-per-hour windstorm, and then we had the Glen Mary day that produced a tornado moving across Louisville. But like last year, this severe weather season, we've all talked about it, is probably going to be front-loaded because it does appear that at some point when we get into mid-May to June, we may shut down storm season a little early. It really always makes itself kind of and breaks even out there. Hannah, that wording there, the two threats on the wording really speak to what we need to prepare for.
Yeah, so what does 80-mile-per-hour wind gust mean? That's really hard to put into context. That's why the Weather Service adds these words to help you understand. It's not us trying to scare you. It's not them trying to scare you either. This is us saying, to the best of our knowledge, 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts are destructive. They will destroy things. That's what that word means, which is why we're encouraging you, whether we're calling out a tornado in your community or not, now is the time to be in your safe place. If I was at home, I would be in my storm place right now, which for me is an interior closet. It's the closet under the stairs. Maybe for you, it's your bathroom. Bathtubs are a really great place to be, especially when you are away from windows. You want to just put as many walls between you and the outside as you can. And at this point, it's essentially all of eastern Jefferson County that's seeing these strong wind gusts, but it's extending even farther south now. We're looking at Mount Washington. You're included in this warning as well. This is headed toward Taylorsville next, but it's that tornado being possible. Rick is very attentively watching to make sure we're not seeing that rotation come up again. And at the same time, whether it's spinning or not, the wind is gusting.
Yeah,
We've
saw it
already
down
seen
Louisville.
that. It was measured. That's not an estimate. A sensor measured a wind gust over 70 miles an hour. We're talking about near hurricane strength at that point.
And I think the interesting thing about that is, you know, the sensor is in one spot in Louisville. Remember, we may not be actually catching the worst of those winds, and that is a reality that we have to consider here. Rick, continue. I'm going to take it over to 3D for you here for a moment. It doesn't look like a ton of rotation in there, but take me through the areas, and let's kind of call out some of those gates, some of those highest winds that you're seeing in radar. And these are only about, I assume, 1,500 feet above the ground. They're still pretty low.
They're still very low. You're right about that. And here's the thing. Now it's moving to eastern Jefferson County.
Okay.
It extends all the way down through Bullitt County. So I know if you're in Bullitt County, you're thinking, okay, what's the deal? What's happening? Well, you're probably experiencing 70-plus mile-per-hour winds, and these are now cruising into Mount Washington, even outside of the warning. Just south of that. So if you live in Lebanon Junction, you probably just got through some of the stronger winds. This is now approaching the Samuels area, Nazareth, Bardstown. You also have to be considerate that these winds are moving your direction very shortly.
Weather Service just upgraded to tornado warning here for Henry, Jefferson, Oldham, and Shelby County. Makes sense here, all things considered. That's the area we're most concerned about. Honestly, I think this is part of what just happened. Weather Service recognizes that a tornado can form with little to no notice here. The gates that we're seeing are probably tornado, or at least destructive winds at minimum. I think this is the right move to go to tornado warning. 14,000 people now without power, and you can hear in Louisville, we can hear our tornado siren that is screaming. So that is Rick.
We're getting our emergency alerts on our phones, just like you are.
Rick did not turn off his EAS warning. Every once in a while, we can have a little fun during a warning.
But it works.
It does work. It got everybody's attention in here and everybody watching.
So,
all right, so back to where we are, though. Tornado warning just issued for Henry, Jefferson, and Oldham, and Shelby County. Hannah, let's take a look in there. Let me go over to the wall and let's track this through Louisville. So here's the thing. Again, I want to really emphasize. There's 14,000 people without power in Louisville. This is not a small situation. This is not got some damaging winds come through. I might lose power. This is a serious life-threatening situation. We had reports of roofs being torn off houses as this is coming through Fern Valley Road. we really need to take this one very seriously. We saw the exact same scenario occur on Friday night. It produced an EF1 tornado, and I'm going to be completely forthcoming. I would not be surprised if we get some skipping tornadoes that occur during this. If it was me sitting in Crestwood right now, I would not be anywhere but in my safe location, because in 4 minutes, at least 80-mile-an-hour winds could, or at least 70, I would say. A warning with 70 to 80 could occur, and you have on top of that the ability to produce a quick tornado. 8 minutes from now in center field, if you're in the Smithfield area right now, 17 minutes until it's in your area, and 20 minutes from now in Eminence, 28 minutes in the Delville area, and then in the Franklinton area, 29 minutes from now. This is our most concerning area. As we look at our area of rotation, Rick, just so I make sure we're on the same page, this is storm relative.
That's base. I'm going to flip over to storm relative.
Okay.
And then just to show you, I think we should, the base one kind of shows.
Base is going to be better in this situation.
Yeah. And also it shows that wind to the southwest.
And so that if there was a tornado that was touching down, I mean, it's almost mind-blowing to me, Middletown. That's where we need to watch. The mind-blowing part is, remember, this is the area that got hit by an EF1 tornado on Friday night. It was Old Henry Road just outside of the Gene Snyder, and then it moved basically along the Jefferson and the Oldham County line. Rod, if you could, I really want to focus in a moment here on those power outages and see specifically where they are, because that's going to help us. But we've got that area rotation. Now, Rick, we're looking at some gates in here. Call out a couple of these. I assume we're looking at some gates over 68. These, I'm guessing 72?
Right on the money.
Okay, so you guys, I spent too much time in my college years as a radar analyst. This is what I did for graduate school. My graduate work was de-aliasing radar data, basically finding the highest gate. My work was part of what was the Spencer, South Dakota tornado in 1998, where we assessed a 267-mile-an-hour wind, which is the second strongest wind ever on the planet. But again, I just give you info. That's the reason why radar, I tend to be a little bit of a radar geek. But so the bottom line here is in rural southeast Jefferson County here, this is approaching Taylorsville Road. The 72 equates to about a 79 to 82 mile-an-hour wind. This is a destructive wind that's about to move across Taylorsville Road. Radar update shows it just did, and now it's approaching Simpsonville. So I'd like to see if we can take a view on our Simpsonville camera momentarily, because that storm is approaching our Simpsonville camera. This is going to be near Cardinal Club, in Simpsonville, also potentially as we look towards the outlets of the Bluegrass. This is looking towards the west, so it'll be intriguing to see as this moves in here. You can see 64 right here. It always blows my mind sometimes how people are kind of not weather aware and even know what's going on. They just continue to drive like nothing's even happening. We'll continue to watch that. Back over to radar here, and I want to focus on multiple areas. So the strongest winds right now, I think we're now probably down to 68 knot, which would be closer to 76 mile an hour, that are moving into around south of Simpsonville, but specifically towards Finchville. Finchville, be aware, destructive winds moving into your area. The tornado warned portion of that storm, there are these little subtle areas of rotation, one that's near Middletown, one that's near Anchorage, and we've got one right now that's about to cross over the Jefferson County line, and this one's going to basically mirror the path we saw on the last tornado that moved into Louisville. This one's going to be along the Shelby-Oldham County line. We need to be very, very aware and careful as that area of rotation, you can see, is mirroring the path that our EF1 tornado took on Friday night. We don't know if it's a tornado or not, but there's enough evidence here that it's fully justified to go under a warning. Now, Louisville's not the only one under a warning. Let's view the wide area. Let's do a quick tour. I know that other people are curious about what's happening. So you can see storms moving towards Munfordville, towards Magnolia and Hodgenville. Be aware, if you've got friends that are driving along 65 in Hart County, severe thunderstorms are about to move across 64. Track on these as they continue their movement off to the east. It's 5:24 right now. We continue with multiple warnings across our area. 2 minutes from now in Magnolia, 6 minutes from now in the Hardyville area, and 34 minutes from now in Campbellsville. Hannah, you've got got new information on the storms?
Yeah, so we're watching our chat service with the National Weather Service.
Okay.
They get information that comes into the office, but there are also other folks in this room, like emergency managers, people who work county by county that can share some information. So I want to make sure we're paying attention to the storm in Larue County, which is what you're looking at here. Even though this looks less impressive, and I'll just go ahead and say it is, the wind here is not as strong as what we're watching around Metro Louisville that's now moving even farther east. However, I think that this storm has had some power in it. We've seen some strong wind gusts. Just a report coming in from Larue County that I'm not going to share at the moment because it needs to be confirmed, but we just want to make sure that we're watching this storm closely. There's still some strong wind. You can see those bright colors around Hodgenville and Magnolia right now. Those are gusts about 60 miles an hour probably. That's why this is still under a severe thunderstorm warning. In fact, I'll take this track away and just remind you of the information on this warning, kind of the nuts and bolts for you, because this is still a dangerous storm. Gusts up to 60 miles an hour are possible. You can see Hart County is still included in this. And as we go through the next few minutes, we'll watch how this particular part of the storm evolves as well.
And now we're up to near 15,000 without power in Jefferson County as those numbers continue to mount as storms are continuing to move across our area. Bardstown, Lebanon Junction, you'll notice you're in between the warning, but I think it's also worth noting, we focused on the tornado warned portion of the storm. That I want to look at a little bit more closely. I'm going to actually, can you pull that full rod? Because I just want to look specifically at those areas. You'll notice some of the spots here where we have some of our largest power outages, exactly where Rick noted. That's near the airport where we had that. So you can see along Preston Highway, inside of the Gene Snyder, those are two of our largest power outages. And then we have another large power outage that is just on the southern side of the Waterson Expressway near St. Matthews. So that would be around Breckenridge Lane. If you were to get off, or Bardstown Road, if you were to get off and go south, you're going to run into one of those higher power outage areas. We have found over the years that viewing power outages is a very effective and accurate way to determine where the severe thunderstorms have moved through. Rick, you pinned these areas. You really pinned them. This is the reason why we always have eyeballs staring at radar, because of this exact situation.
Right. And hopefully you at home, we gave you enough notice so you can get to your safe place. And if you lost power and you're without power, everything's charged. Make sure your iPad, your phone is charged up, so that way you can still get any sort of information. What I kind of want to do is just give you a wide perspective, get everyone up to date, because I know we focus a lot on where the tornado warning is, and then in Louisville, but every single county, every single person and home in this area, you matter to us. So I just want to give you a quick overview and show you what's going on. Obviously, our southeastern counties, you have been virtually untouched by rain and storms up to this point. So that's why this spot, we're going to watch very carefully for extensions of these severe thunderstorm warnings, because you still have the fuel, you still have the instability. Rain hasn't cooled the atmosphere for you just yet, but storms are quickly advancing in from the west. This is where we have a severe thunderstorm warning. Wind gusts to around 60 in Magnolia. It's about to cross over I-65 in Munfordville, and it's now about 5:30 or so. A lot of people at this point in their day, they're hitting the road, they want to get home, put their feet up, kick back and relax. Well, unfortunately, I would just advise to you, if you are trying to travel on I-65 south of Mount Washington right now, wait. Wait about 15 minutes to a half hour or so. Let this storm pass by. It will be in Hardeeville in 8 minutes, New Haven in about 12, in the Summersville area in 25 minutes, and Sonoma in 35. This continues to race its way off to the east. On the backside of that, we have what we call stratiform rain, which is now developed in areas like Litchfield through Brandenburg. So you're still getting a decent amount of rainfall. You probably hear some of those rumbles of thunder, but the severe threat has come down because the rain has hit you and cooled things off, focusing in on the eastern half of Jefferson County, where we still have that severe thunderstorm warning. You could see gusts north of 70 miles an hour. We measured at the airport a 78-mile-per-hour wind gust. So that's the kind of wind we can see being blown out of some of these storms, hitting areas like Bedford, LaGrange. I would not want to be traveling northbound to Cincinnati on 71 right now. We still have that tornado-warned storm, and in this sort of scenario, a quick spin-up tornado, that's going to be the main threat. We're not talking about tornadoes on the ground, big ones for long periods of time, but quick spin-ups, damage can be done. The same exact scenario that we saw unfold on Friday. This time, we have severe weather, but it's on a Wednesday. You can see in areas like LaGrange, Campbellsburg, very heavy rain. Shelbyville under a severe thunderstorm warning. Carrollton, you are not, but areas just to the west of that, you now have to think, okay, well, we could be under a severe thunderstorm warning, and maybe even a tornado warning if this storm can hold together within the next half hour to 45 minutes. So just hang in there. In our southern and eastern counties, you are not through it just yet. This is definitely the show. It's the first time that we've had severe storms arrive during peak heating, when we have the most warmth, the most fuel, and the most instability. Mark?
And let's go over to weather pics here briefly. I'm going to show you what it looks like on Fern Valley Road. And you can see this is where Rick noted that we had those potentially 80-mile-an-hour winds. And you can see this one sent to me on Twitter, Preston Highway and Fern Valley Road. And you can see what it did to the power lines and the power poles. It literally snapped these in half. If news is looking to get out to a spot, Preston Highway, Fern Valley is going to be an area that we need to go. We've got crews en route here. Let me show you this picture. South end close to the airport. Mary Hirth sent this picture in, and you can see the tree completely ripped out of the ground. The number of times that we have seen this in the last 3 months in our area, whether it's from a high wind warning or a possible tornado or straight line winds, is appalling. The amount of tree damage that we have had and power outages is appalling this year. It's been a really tough stretch. We haven't shown the extended. We're not going to hear probably for a little while until we get away from this active weather here. But I can tell you that after today, the weather pattern shifts and it's going to quiet down a lot. But
Amen.
That said, let's get back into this here. Tornado warning continues in effect here for Henry, Oldham, and Shelby County. And one thing that's important to note here is surrounding that, you will notice that orange box. The orange box that surrounds that tornado warning is an 80-mile-an-hour severe thunderstorm warning. An 80-mile-an-hour severe thunderstorm warning is a dangerous warning.
So the Weather Service just updated that warning, which is what I came to check on. They're still going tornado possible.
Okay.
We want to make sure we address that. They've brought that down to 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts.
Down.
Right? That's still an upper-level severe thunderstorm warning. Normal is 60. This warning is now 70, and it was 80. Okay, so progress, I guess, but this is still considerable damage. You can see that listed here. Remember, first the Weather Service was calling this destructive because there's really no way around it. 80-mile-per-hour will destroy things, 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Now that we're talking about gusts up to 70 miles an hour, the damage threat there is considerable. This is still something that will cause power outages if we get gusts that are widespread at this level, and we're still dealing with that tornado possible. Oh, interesting. Okay, those are raindrops.
Wow.
For a moment, I thought those were things on the camera. I think that's a lot of rain and some leaves from the trees
look at
nearby.
even the lowering that's moving across there on our Simpsonville camera.
That's closing on 64.
These are the things that can and do produce really quick tornado spin-ups here. This is very strong wind here that's in Simpsonville at Cardinal Club right now. One of the areas that we have watched, but even stronger winds as we look towards Shelbyville and Finchville. This is really a situation here this evening where we do indeed have dangerous thunderstorms that are in our area. Dangerous thunderstorms that continue to move through. Southern part of our area, we continue with severe thunderstorm warnings here. Hodgenville, approaching the New Haven area. Stiles, atmosphere is untouched in Greensburg, Campbellsville, Columbia, Lebanon. There's no reason to believe those storms don't hold. Northern part of the area is where we've been the most concerned. Note here, tornado warning has been dropped, but this is still a high-end severe thunderstorm warning. My opinion is, and again, I'll let news know, I'm going to stay with this for probably about another 10 minutes. I want to just make sure, number one, that we don't get another quick spin up and then we go back to news and come back over to weather. But number two, I got this email the other day, somebody in Trimble County, and they said, Mark, it feels like when storms get past Louisville, sometimes you guys are not paying as much attention. And I just want you to know that if you're in Trimble County, if you're in Henry County, if you're in Shelby County, if you're in Carroll County, we care about you and we're going to watch these storms through. These are dangerous thunderstorms with potentially 70-mile-per-hour winds. Rick, you've been looking at Storm View 3D.
Correct.
So what you do in this one is this gives you the ability for two things. We normally use this to really identify where a tornado is occurring, but in this particular situation, I don't think it matters if it's a tornado or straight line winds because they're going to do similar level of damage.
For sure.
You've been doing what we call pixel peeping. You're looking at the highest gates here to find out what kind of wind you're seeing. Shelbyville to Finchville, I obviously see, but what kind of gates are you seeing? What are some of the strongest numbers that you've got in there?
So what I'm trying to do is identify which are the brightest gates inside of this radar scan. And so where I'm looking for are those areas of pink right around there. And I'm looking at knots of around 63 to 64.
Okay, so that'd be 70 mile an
Still
hour.
some 70 mile per hour winds, which the warning is for now. Considerable damage is the tag that the Weather Service has attached to that. And you have to kind of think now, okay, these are right along the Shelbyville line, and they're just to the east of Finchville. So who's next in line?
Exactly.
Clay
Waddy-Peytona.
Village, Waddy-Peytona exit, Mount Eden, Van Buren. You're going to have to deal with 70 mile per hour winds, which could do damage. You don't want to be on the western side of your house because that's where these winds are coming from. So make sure on the eastern side, interior room, away from windows, and now you should act. So Clay Village, the Waddy-Peytona area, that's your heads up.
Yeah.
Just told you right there. So again, these storms are moving your way, and I do not anticipate them to weaken. There's no reason they would. There's plenty of untouched fuel out ahead of this line, and it's going to feed on that as much as it can. So now we are seeing more of a damaging wind threat.
Agreed.
As we look into Shelby County, through northern Spencer County, around Elk Creek area. If you're in Louisville, I mean, the severe threat has come down substantially. And that's because of that line that just came through with the widespread rain and storm action, but leaving behind now so many people without power. And hopefully you can get back up and running quickly, because I know it just feels like we've lost power so many times.
Yes.
At this point, you would think all the weakest trees would have been knocked down.
That's how I felt.
You know, it's like the ones that are getting uprooted now, you can see these are strong trees.
Right.
They're not weak ones that, you know, have been dry rotted or anything. These things are big trees that have strong root systems, and these winds are strong enough to knock those over.
That 78 mile per hour wind that was measured at the airport is comparable to our high wind warning day where we had.
That's right.
I think that was
79.
70. Yeah, 70. What did we have? I think without power peak on that was over. Maybe it was near 50-ish.
50, it was like 40, 50.
So, I mean, you know, while everybody did not see that, there's still parts of Louisville that now were equivalent in the severe thunderstorms to what occurred. Hannah, you've been monitoring the National Weather Service chat here, looking down at some of the reports we're getting. Any recent reports that really raise attention anywhere specifically?
Well, that southern storm, frankly, we've come back to it a few times, but it wasn't getting as much attention when Louisville was getting hit with 80 mile per hour winds, 70 mile per hour winds. But that southern storm, we just got a report in from the Mesonet site in Hart County that they measured a gust of 55 miles an hour about 5 minutes ago. So that storm is still very strong. 55 miles an hour is close to the threshold for a severe thunderstorm warning. This warning is for 60 mile per hour gusts. So you can see there is still plenty of power in this storm as well. Rick mentioned earlier, this is moving into an area that's been untapped, that has still plenty of energy to supply it. So you can see Summersville, this is still about 5 minutes away from you. Campbellsville, it's closer to 20 minutes. And the Casey Creek area, about 35 or 40 minutes away from you. And the Weather Service has just issued a new severe thunderstorm warning. This one is for strong wind gusts only. If we're looking for good news here, this is for parts of Henry and Shelby and Trimble counties. Let me take away this track. I'll zoom out and show that to you. I also want to mention, now that the strongest wind has moved past Louisville, if you have a photo of damage that you have taken safely and want to share with us, find us on social media. We're going to be sharing some of those in the next few minutes as we come to understand how strong this wind has become. But here's that new warning for you. Put the information on here.
It always is going to toggle to the
It's going to
highest
show
warning.
the strongest one. Well, I guess there's more good news here. I'll take that away so we don't get confused. But that's a warning that, remember, had 80 mile per hour gust, destructive wind in the tag, tornado was possible. Then we get a warning for the same area that's 70 mile per hour wind gusts doing considerable damage, tornadoes possible. Now, as we continue to follow that storm to the east, the warning is for 60 mile per hour wind gusts. That is strong enough to do damage. It's the whole reason these storms get warned at all, okay? But this is the lowest end severe thunderstorm warning that this storm has had in about half an hour. So we're not seeing it fall apart. It still has a lot of power in it. This is still capable of producing damage and power outages, full stop. And at the same time, we are clearly seeing the wind come down a little bit, which I think is great news as we look at this storm. Mark?
And what I would like to do, Hannah, is let's track through some of those areas that are in that warning here. Again, you know, I mentioned this earlier. Somebody emailed me out of Trimble County. I really take pride in making sure that if you're the biggest community in our area or the smallest, that you do get coverage here. And I really think that's important. And my response to the gentleman out of Trimble County is, we're going to cover you. We're on top of this and we're going to watch. And so I really would like to take a look here. Wide perspective. If you're in Seymour, if you're in North Vernon and Bedford, look, it's rained the atmosphere down. I told you guys that along and south of the river, along meaning Indiana as well, the fuel would be better. And that is just the reality in this situation. You know, I also pride myself in severe weather analysis. It's one of the things that I really think that my background gives me the best skill set to do that. but I really pride myself in trying to identify areas of greatest risk here. So Christiansburg, 1 minute from now. Gratz, 8 minutes from now. New Liberty, it's going to be 12 minutes from now. Stamping Ground, you're 19 minutes from now. And Barry, 33 minutes. I want to do a zoom in along 71 here, and I want to scope that area partially because obviously this is a heavy travel time considering that it's the evening. And so what we're looking for is some of those pinks here. Hannah alluded to this, but the wind intensity is not what it was. So we're still looking at some 60s now coming through south of Carrollton, Port Royal, which would be going through Henry County, and specifically now we're worried about Henry County, Shelby County, and then that would continue its movement off to the east. But you'll kind of see here what's going to occur as we'll see some of these warnings getting trimmed back. Now you'll also notice that we've added warnings to our southeast counties. I want to make sure that if you're in Adair County, if you're in Greene County, if you're in Taylor County, that we're watching you as well. So we're going to make a jump now to the storms that are moving through our southeast counties where a new warning was just issued. Hannah, can we get a marker on this warning? I just want to see what we're talking about, but Lawrenceburg, Willisburg, Lebanon, Campbellsville, Greensburg. Severe thunderstorm warning here would include Adair, Greene, Marion, Taylor County, and it does look like towards Lawrenceburg, which would be Anderson County. 60-mile-per-hour winds. From there, obviously the question is when. You'll notice that this is right between Willisburg, Lebanon, Campbellsville, and Greensburg. So within some of our counties in the southeast, and I want to track them so you know when to expect it. What we will watch, so we're clear, is these little appendages. We're going to watch them to make sure that they don't turn into quick spin-ups, because those can and do occur, so we'll be watching that. And Rick, I'm going to give you a heads up. Let's inspect southeastern part of our area because I'd like to take a look. Greensburg, 5 minutes from now. Remember, 60-mile-an-hour winds. Stay away from the western side of the house. Why? Damaging winds will come out of the west. That's where if a window was shattered by some debris, that's the part of your house where that would occur. Saloma, 10 minutes from now. Campbellsville, you've got 13 minutes until it's in your area, and 27 minutes from now in the Clementsville area. So the strong to severe storms are making their march across our area. I want to let news know, worst case scenario, I think, is we're probably back to full news by 6. But if we continue in the level we're in, we may come back to news, and so we can get caught up on the latest news of the day as well. Lebanon, 4 minutes from now. Gravel Switch, 16 minutes from now. Harrodsburg, 23 minutes from now. And Danville, 31 minutes from now. Rick, I kind of asked you to take a look at those southeast counties on our analyst radar. What are you seeing specifically there? Do you have anything that concerns you, or are you looking at mainly straight line winds?
So just to kind of give everyone a kind of heads up, we're looking about 3,500 feet up into the storm because we're very far away from the radar, and you have to kind of understand how these radars work. They are strategically placed throughout the country. Think of them like cell phone towers, right? The same idea. So there are parts of the area where you can get bad reception, for a lack of terms, and we are looking, again, really high up in the storm, but around Horse Cave, Munfordville, there are some areas, at least aloft, that show some signs of some subtle rotation where you see the greens and the reds coming together. I'm going to go back just a couple of scans. You can see just to the east of Horse Cave there was a tiny little area of rotation, and now we're seeing kind of two weaker separate areas. One, again, to the north of Cave City, and then another one just south of Munfordville. These traveling off to the east. I'm going to turn on the NROT just to kind of see if there's any sort of normalized rotation area that pops out. Simply what this does is it takes away all the clutter and just shows you the spin in the atmosphere. Not seeing anything overly concerning. Obviously, there's quite a bit of spin around there, but nothing that's going to say, okay, there's definitely a tornado occurring on the ground. But again, there's some spin. And what that can do, it can produce some strong winds. And I do think that's a guarantee in some of those areas. Winds at the bare minimum of some 60 mile per hour. But I do unfortunately think we'll have pockets of some stronger winds. So we're going to watch this going eastbound. Again, we have that new severe thunderstorm warning, we call these blanket warnings because they cover so much real estate. But that's the one now for Campbellsville, Greensburg. It is about to hit you areas like Columbia, through Lebanon, all now under a severe thunderstorm warning. And I do want to just kind of give you a quick update on that warning itself. It is for 60-mile-per-hour winds and also some hail, which would be the size of about a nickel or so.
And Hannah, I see on the back row there, I assume you're looking for some pictures?
Yes, we're getting more of these to come in now. In fact, if we can go ahead and take weather pics.
Okay.
I just loaded one in from Sherry. She
Okay.
posted this from Blanton
Oh,
Lane.
No.
Yeah, that's guys, that's a large tree. Let's just acknowledge how big that tree is.
After 80-mile-an-hour winds, or 79 earlier in the year, multiple times where we've had severe thunderstorms, these are healthy trees, Hannah, that are letting go. It's just been unrelenting.
It has been
Look at the frame of the
unrelenting.
car.
Look at how large that tree is. It takes up half the car. I hope, obviously nobody was in there. We do have some reports of trees on homes. Hannah, this is Hikes Point, Hikes Lane.
Hikes Point, this is Hikes Lane and Furman Boulevard. Nancy sent this one in. Obviously, this is a tree that has snapped a little bit higher up, whereas the first one we showed you is a tree that fell closer to the base of the tree. We're getting a lot more of these photos to come in now, guys, so I'll start to show you some more of these because this helps us understand the wind that we're talking about. Oh, 60 mile per hour this and 70 mile per hour that. It's hard to put that in context, conceptualize this. So we're going to try to show you some pictures so you understand what these storms are doing because they're still moving through our communities. They are still producing this level of damage as they cross through our area.
And you know, the power outage, this is the one. Oh, Rod, can you give me a location on this one? Okay, so this is near Iroquois Park, Jacqueline Stone, and you can see it's in the house. It's inside the house. The problem here we're seeing is we're not looking at small trees that have gone down. These are gargantuan trees with an obscene amount of weight that literally split this house. Hopefully nobody was in these rooms, but you know, one of the things we really tried to emphasize, when you get winds of this level, it is a life-threatening situation. Power outages, latest from LG&E, I've got that up on my computer as well, now north of 16,000, at 16,033 without power in Louisville. This is another tree out of the Iroquois Park area. This is an area that it looks like it was hit very hard. This is an area that Rick DeLuca had identified when those storms were coming through, that we had higher wind. There is a down tree on Gagel Avenue. Julie Waterbury sending these in case you're wondering how we get these, I'm easy to find on Facebook. It's Mark Weinberg, Mark with a C. And then also on Twitter, Mark Weinberg WX. Get those to us. We'll get them on TV as quickly as possible. Kathy Sturgeon out of the Kenwood Hill area showing us a tree that has just been snapped in half. And then we briefly showed you that, Rod, location on this picture. J-Town, tree on a house from Shauna. These are, you know, it's one thing to have a tree where you got to do some damage cleanup. It's one thing when some shingles get blown off your house. I mean, these are life-changing events here where people are going to remember, you know, you remember that day on April 5th in 2023 where the tree went through the house. Obviously, the hope here is that we don't have any injuries. That's really what we're praying for. Ellen Lusader sent this in from Heather Lane off Goldsmith, and you can see another tree in a home. Of all of the events that we have seen this year, this one's showing me more trees on homes and in homes than I think that we have seen on any of our events that have occurred this year. It is troubling to see as we continue with strong to severe storms that are moving across our area. We're watching, there are so many areas where we have subtle rotation within the line. Obviously, these are storms that have done a lot of damage within our area. Please, I just think it's worth a very important reminder here. If you see a power line that's down, you don't know if it's live. You don't drive over it. You don't go near them. You know, that is a situation where when you have this amount of tree damage, you can have loss of life. So please avoid those power lines. I know LG&E and Duke would say the same thing. They could be live. It's not worth your life. And this is another tree that's down in Corydon. This is when the storm came through Corydon. And remember, we were watching this really closely. Aaron Payton Day sent this in out of Corydon. It's tough to see all of these damaged pictures from around our area, and we'll continue to show you more. Let's head back over to StormView HD on radar here. I'm going to take a tour around our area. Let's update you on the latest on where we stand. Severe thunderstorm warning remains in effect here for Henry, Shelby, Trimble County. Notice there is the tornado possible tag is no longer on there. A couple of things I want to note. We got kind of so busy here. Remember when we breached 5 o'clock, the tornado watch, we had to decide what to do with it. You'll notice the bug on the corner of the screen here shows you that the Storms Prediction Center chose to replace the tornado watch with a severe thunderstorm watch. And you can see we've got severe thunderstorms basically that are scraping every one of our eastern counties. So I want to do a track on this. If you're in New Liberty, if you're in Monterey, if you're in Frankfort, these storms are now moving towards you. They will be out of our area here shortly. Again, I would tell news, my feeling right now is going to be close to 6 when we come back. I think I'd like to probably start near the top of the hour. We'll get you caught up on the latest news of the day, of course, and update you on our severe potential here. 4 minutes from now in the Natley area, 9 minutes from now in the Williamstown area, Barry 29 minutes from now, and then Cynthiana, it'll be around 30 minutes from now. Just note here in the Frankfort area, Rick's going to allow us to scope, and I just want to look closely at what we've got here. Got some probably 58 to 62 mile per hour wind gusts, I'm guessing near the Pleasureville area as we look. We're not seeing any of those orange in there, which go north of 70. That's good news. But the strongest winds will be moving out of Shelby County within the next 10 minutes or so. Remember, we have more severe thunderstorms in our far southeastern counties. Let's take a trip down to check out what you have if you're in Anderson County or if you're going further off to the south. This is an area that we do need to watch, and I want to be clear as to why. Severe thunderstorm warning for Adair, Greene, Marion, and Taylor County. I want to be clear. We have a broken line here. Broken lines can and do produce tornadoes with little to no advance notice. So we need to watch that. One of those areas where we have a broken line would be near Springfield, Lebanon. So we're watching you closely. I want to scope this area here specifically on that break near the St. Mary area. What we're going to do is we're going to assess and make sure that there's no conspicuous areas of rotation. Nothing in there that really bothers me in terms of maybe a spin occurring. There is at least some subtle rotation here near Lebanon. It is something that is worth watching. Springfield's in the core, so you're going to be more on those 50 to 60 mile per hour winds. We see a gap. New Market, you're probably going to break into that gap. And then we get into Saloma. Notice lightning strikes near the Willowtown area. This is another one of those breaks within the line. We need to, again, watch for those to see if there's any rotation. Summersville would be more important to watch. We're going to do a track on this one, so that's going to be in Campbellsville, 2 minutes. Stay away from the western side of the house. Campbellsville, not worth that risk. New Market, 19 minutes from now. Bradfordsville, you're about 31 minutes from now for those storms being in your area with potentially 60 mile per hour winds. Let's recenter near Saloma, and I want to take a view in that southern part of that storm to make sure as we scope, I want to look at those rotation areas. And Hannah, we're going to come to you here in a moment. I see your eyes on the analyst looking at 3D here. So as we look, you see here, let's go a little bit further to the west into that gap, Rick. Again, maybe some subtle areas of rotation. One good thing here, we're not seeing those really obscene wind gates that produced an 80 mile an hour wind in Louisville. And let's close it out, make the track further off to the south. I want to make sure that we've got you in Dunnensburg. I want to make sure you know we've got you in the Columbia area. We're on top of these storms, watching them really closely. Let's track the southern portion of this line. Remember, the air's untouched in Columbia. You've not seen any thunderstorms coming through yet. I do think we need to be aware of potential for severe weather for you and your 40 minutes from now. In the Wisdom area, 5 minutes from now, 16 minutes from now in Edmonton. We're talking 28 minutes from now in Weed, and then 40 minutes from now in the Columbia area. As we look on Analyst, our Analyst computer is going to allow us to have the best view of those rotation potentials. Are we seeing any of those areas that show any potential for rotation? Rick, you've been manning our Analyst computer a lot during the evening here. And I would say as I look here, there's certainly some areas that have some subtle rotation. Nothing is concerning me right now.
I would absolutely 100% agree with you. That is definitely the case. There are subtle areas of rotation, but nothing that I'm overly concerned about that jumps out and says, okay, we have a tornado on the ground doing damage. There is some spin that can help enhance the severe weather, but overall not seeing anything tornadic. Now, I do think we're going to see some powerful winds around 60s, but not close to the 80 mile per hour winds that we had a little while ago. I mean, that was another level, and just seeing so many of those pictures of those massive, large, healthy trees coming down, and just the weight of those on some homes and some cars. Now is the time where, you know, if the storms are past you and it's safe, you got to be a good neighbor. Go ask, make sure everything's okay, make sure everyone is, safely accounted for. You can help them, give them some food, some water. I mean, this is a situation where, you rise to the occasion. And now that the storms are definitely passing off to the east, the severe threat is coming down, not for everyone in our southeastern counties yet, but the rest of the area, especially northwest and southern Indiana, see what we can do to help. So I do want to kind of focus in on those southeastern storms because we still have that warning, not quite out of the area just yet, but we're not going to turn our back on this one. We're going to walk it through every step of the way. Adair County still hasn't been touched yet. We now have the storms approaching Lebanon, Campbellsville, Greensburg area. So if you were traveling on 68, hopefully you're not traveling on 68. Maybe pull off the side of the road, just kind of wait for these storms to pass by.
So we've talked a lot about travel today. I want to take the WeatherPix computer to show you why we've been talking so much about travel. We're getting some of these reports, many pictures of this exact incident. This was at Gene Snyder at Dixie Highway. Kathy sent in this photo. Folks, let me say this as we're talking about pictures from the road. Do not take photos while you're driving. It's not safe. Already the weather is unsafe, and then you're putting everyone else on the road in danger. With that in mind, we're getting several photos of this particular incident, of this semi clearly getting blown over as that strong wind was coming through the metro. We're also getting more reports coming in from the Newburgh area at the Watterson. A lot of reports being focused there. So we want to make sure that over the next few minutes, even around the Louisville metro where the worst of the wind has moved on, that we're still being cautious on the road.
Absolutely.
So we just saw this wind come through. Everybody who was out in it had to deal with that and manage it, and now we're cleaning up a little bit. So you just want to be mindful if you're trying to hit the road. The interstates are dealing with cleaning up the traffic. The smaller roads in your neighborhood are dealing with trees that are on them and limbs. So you're encountering this in real time if you're getting on the road now. If you can wait a little bit longer, you're going to be safer as we start to clean up these incidents that are happening.
And I think it's also worth noting, and LG&E and Duke always say this afterwards, you don't know if those power lines are live.
So true.
And, it's not worth it. You don't drive over those. Your life is at risk if you attempt to drive over one of those. There are going to be a lot of areas that are going to be tough to get to now with a lot of trees down. The interesting thing about this event versus what we saw, in the windstorm, those trees down were everywhere. And there was a lot of those medium level trees and the smaller ones that kind of let go. What's different on this is we've cleaned out some of the weaker trees, and we're seeing in this particular situation is that a lot of these trees that have gone down are gargantuan, monstrous, healthy trees. And I can assure you that they cannot stand up to 80-mile-an-hour winds from a severe thunderstorm. Interesting thing I noted on that Dixie Highway truck down. So I assume that's on the Watterson Expressway. That's an east-west road.
She said she was on Gene Snyder.
Okay, that's east-west there.
Yeah.
Which means that thing's blown southward, which normally on a severe thunderstorm, the winds are going to be coming from the west.
Right.
So the fact that got blown southward, I wonder if there was some rotation in that area. These are subtle things that we're just going to be looking at as these continue to move through. You can see that's what we're talking about, where the truck was laid over there. We've got, let me show you the wide perspective here, just so you can get a sense of where we stand on radar. We still have severe thunderstorms in our eastern and southeastern counties. I will say all of these warnings right now are non-elevated warnings with 60-mile-per-hour winds. We just got a 52-mile-an-hour wind gust at the Kentucky Mesonet in Franklin County. At some point here, we're going to return you back to programming because I know there's news of the day. On top of that, news is going to be getting us caught up on the damage that has occurred, showing some more pictures as we then start to focus on what we have moving forward. But we still continue here with some severe thunderstorm warnings, specifically in our southeast counties and our eastern counties. I want to check Willisburg. Rick, you're noting maybe a little small hail there?
A little tiny hail, yeah.
Okay. Just looking at the warnings here so I can get end times on them. The severe thunderstorm warning expired for Henry, Shelby, and Trimble. So that one's going to be allowed to expire here. Our severe thunderstorm warning that continues. The second one that was Franklin, Henry, Shelby, Trimble also will be allowed to expire at the top of the hour, which would leave us with our warning that solely exists for our southeast counties. So this one would be for Taylor, Marion, Greene, Adair, and Lawrenceburg. Technically, you're not in our area. We still cover you, though. So that would be Anderson County. We are watching you as well. That would be the lone severe thunderstorm warning that remains in effect for our area. That one's going to be until Let me check the time on that one. The far southeast would be
I got it,
until
till
6:15. Okay, 6:15. And so we will, as we go back to news, I just want to give news a heads up here. We're going to roll out at 6 o'clock, top of the hour, to come back over to news. Rod, if you could, let me know if we're going to do that straight up or if we're going to do that just a couple seconds before. And then we'll continue to monitor the southeast counties. Columbia, we're not going to ignore you. We're going to continue to do weather updates. We just want to make sure that you also can get the news of the day as the severe intensity is slowly starting to drop on what has been another destructive day with storms moving across our area. Wide perspective continues to show Louisville, we're still dealing with rainfall right now. We are going to for several more hours. It's a 100% probability, not an if. There is still more heavy rain out there. We continue with strong storms here. So this is going to head towards Maysville in the eastern part of Kentucky. I know our friends in Lexington are curious. Lexington, about 60 minutes from now, watching potential for some 60-mile-per-hour winds. And then back within our viewing area, the area that we're watching the closest would be our southeast counties, so specifically areas like Lebanon, like Springfield, like Campbellsville, and like Columbia. We're watching those storms as they continue to move across your area. The greatest threat will be 60-mile-per-hour winds. Just a reminder from the group here, if you encounter any power lines that are down, please avoid them at all costs. This has been a destructive event with destructive 80-mile-per-hour winds moving across Louisville. It's 6 o'clock at the top of the hour. Keep it right here on WDRB for continuing updates.